Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I thought we would do some acrylic painting techniques. Now I'm going to be using Liquitex's Heavy Body. I have an ultramarine blue. I have, let's see, this is a yellow medium. I have a cadmium-free yellow and a cadmium-free red that I am going to be using, and a titanium white. So let's begin. The first one we can talk about is glazing. Glazing is a technique where you have a dry layer of paint and you add a second layer of paint on top that is wet. So I am going to add some red that's nice and thinned and watered down so you can still kind of see the blue underneath and you can see the red on top. Glazing works really well when the top layer is thinner. And that's what that looks like. So a second technique would just to be doing sort of flat blending. And let's see, let's grab some blue. Here's my blue. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of red to that. And I'm just blending one color gently into another color. This is just flat blending, not a big thing. Impasto is where you take paint and you put it from the tube directly onto the surface, and that is something that is meant to be incredibly thick. So impasto painting is where you like really thick tons of texture directly on your surface. Now I am using Fabriano Studio Cold Press. It is 300 grams. It is 25% cotton. This is just something I happen to be using right now. You can acrylic paint on watercolor paper. Just know that if you're going thick and heavy with stuff like the impasto technique, that it might buckle and curl a bit just from the weight and all the moisture within the paint. So this is really, really thick. But if you're doing something really thick, like, I don't know, maybe this is a jellyfish or a rain cloud, and you really like thick textures, this is a really fun technique. Now, Scrafito is where you put a layer on, and we will do a thicker blue layer, and we're going to add another layer on top. So let's add some yellow this time. And what you want to do is you want to scratch off the top layer to reveal the second layer. And you can scratch with anything. You can scratch with a toothpick, your fingernail, a push pin. I'm going to be using the end of a paper clip, and you can scratch and reveal the blue paint underneath. And this is a really fun technique. And whether you like your paint thinner or thicker, that's just preference. So that's a lot of fun. That technique is also used in pottery. There is stenciling, where you take a stencil. This is a cookie cutter I have. Don't mind me. This is how I get things done during a no-buy. And you just sort of fill in that stencil. And there we have my moon or my sun. Either way. Stencils are a lot of fun. You can finger paint. I don't know when it became passé for adults to finger paint, but I think they should get back into it. I think it is so much fun. Here is my little flower. There we go. So, finger painting. Absolutely tons of fun. Highly recommend. There is alla prima, which is where you add a layer of wet paint on top of another layer of wet paint. So if I have my red here, and that's kind of thick and that's fine. Paint is meant to be used, and I add another layer of really thick paint, and they can kind of blend together and work together, but that's what alla prima is. It's a huge, thick, wet on wet. And that can be incredibly beautiful depending on what you're creating. Juliskoro is adding light colored paint to dark color paint for high contrast. Now the highest contrast value you could get would be having black and then adding white on top. I don't have any black, so we're gonna use the darkest value I have, which is my blue. And we're gonna add some white on top. And again, I have the titanium white. And that'll be a high value as I can get with my stuff today. Let's get a brush. And that's just sort of the effect you're going for. The blue pops, the white on top pops. And that can be thick and it can be thin. Again, what's best is what's preference. It depends on what you're working on. So there is stippling, just like drawing with pen and ink. Creating pictures by adding little dots is something you can absolutely do with paint, with acrylic paint. It's a lot of fun. From a distance, if you stipple red and yellow together, side by side, it'll look orange from farther away. So stippling can be a lot of fun. There's splattering. You kind of want to have more water in your brush and thinner paint, and you can splatter. Splatter is a beautiful effect. I'm just tapping my brush to get it to come out. Now you can add mixed media to your acrylic paint. You don't just have to stick with acrylic paint, especially if you're doing a no-buy and you don't want to buy any more supplies. So here I am just adding my acrylic paint, and I am going to get out my gouache. This is the Holbein, the permanent white that I have. And these two blend very well together. In fact, a lot of products blend really, really well with acrylic paint. You could use charcoal, you can use charcoal pencils. You can sponge. If you have sponges, kitchen sponges, any kind of sponge you can find, works really, really great for acrylic painting. And I'll show you the texture of this sort of sea sponge. And I'll link all these different products down below if you just want to see what I'm working with. If you don't have any sponges, there is something else you can use as a sponge, and that is a piece of tin foil. Yep. So you just want to kind of crumple it up. I'm going to stick it. I want you to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to stick it in my paint. So I have it right there. And excuse the large cars going by. And I'm going to sponge. And you can experiment with texture. You can experiment with how much paint you put on your tin foil. Let's see if I can get more of this onto the screen better. I apologize. But you don't have to own a sponge to sponge with paint. Tin foil works great. Another thing you can do, if you like sort of the impasto thick effect, is you can add things to your paint. So you can add sand. Now I don't have any sand, but I do have some brown rice. And brown rice is something you can mix into really thick paint. I'm going to show you how to do that. And it creates a really cool looking three-dimensional texture you can have in your pieces of art. And if you're working on a heavier art board, you could even do small pebbles and things like that. You can go thicker and bigger if you choose. Now I have a really old video on how to make a stay wet palette. That would be the one negative about acrylic paint, is that once it dries on your palette, you can't re-wet it and keep using it like watercolor. So I will link that really old video I have. It's all kitchen items, a Tupperware with a lid, paper towel, wax paper, a mister, and you can make a stay wet palette in case you're making and mixing colors, or you've poured too much out of the tube and you're going to come back to it and you don't want it to dry out. Now for a palette, I actually use a piece of plexiglass scrap, and the reason I do that is for when I don't clean this off. I don't want to put paint into our water. So when this dries, I literally peel it up. It just scrapes right off when it is fully dry on plexiglass. And I will link a place that sells plexiglass scrap. I hope these ideas gave you some inspiration. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.